Black Tengu Productions.
Hello everyone, today I'm going to be talking about this extremely rare succulent that's found in North America, to be more specific in Mexico and kind of southern US, California, Texas region. These are really cool succulent, and as you saw in the intro, they look really cool. Now those are some cultivars that have been kind of crossbred to look that certain way in the hobby, but nonetheless they're super cool, super hardy if you do it right. So now let's get started. So right now you can see I'm just potting up uh, all these grafting stocks. So grafting stock are the base plants that we're going to be using to graft our seeds, our germinated seeds onto seedlings. The grafting stock I'm using is called Perisciopsis. They're like a super extremely fast growing. The reason they work well is one, because they're compatible for grafting with Ariocarpus. That's one thing. Not all plants are compatible. And two, they grow really fast. So they're going to get our seedlings that would normally take, I don't know, I may be exaggerating here, but like 5 years, you're going to get the same amount of growth in maybe 1 or 2 years. So it's crazy. But they don't last forever. The soil mix I'm using is just a cactus succulent soil mix you could find at Home Depot or anywhere else, and a little bit of other roughage like volcanic rock or anything else that could just add some, more air to the soil. You don't really have to, but I like to. Now you should have started that potting process around 2 weeks before you were getting your seeds and going to start germinating your seeds. So at this point, I've got my seeds. Um, my stock has been growing for about 2 weeks. They're well rooted and ready to go, and my seeds have popped out. About 90% of them have already started showing, and I'm going to start grafting process. Let's get ready to cutting. So first we're going to want to cut the top. If we're doing a big batch, cut the top of all of them first. If you can, make sure to have a few leaves at the bottom, because that really makes things grow faster. If you can't, it's not the end of the world. So I got these off of Amazon, these kind of X-Acto knives, reuse or disposable rather, and just do a quick clean cut. Use some tweezers, because they're like, these periscopes are very prickly and the spines are like so tiny, really getting better in your hands and super irritating. So use something like this to hold it in place while you cut, really get the tension. And you want clean cuts, and just go through, and this is just your initial cut. You're going to do another one after you've cut your seedlings. And make sure you're labeling and keeping track of all your seeds. This is going to be a Coral Godzilla crossed with a Super Godzilla. Great names, I love it. And now let's get to the seedlings. Now at this point, the seedlings are about 2 to 3 weeks old, maybe a little bit older. So we're going to grab one, and then we're going to start cutting it. So they're going to be roots. I'm just looking for the roots. I don't know why I'm being so delicate with the roots, because I pretty much ignore it anyways when we cut them. So I like to cut a little bit below the thickest part of the seedling, but feel free to experiment which works best for you. And this is really a learning process. I know these seeds are expensive, but you're not going to have 100% success your first time. Note is the intro, the plants you saw in the beginning, that was one of many, one of few that made it. Sorry, misspoke there. Now, if you do a nice clean cut like I'm about to do here, both halves will be just on the side of your blade. And then in the next step, you're going to see is that we're just going to keep it on the blade and then just swipe it onto the our grafting stock. But make sure you recut your grafting stock. You want a nice fresh cut on your grafting stock before you put on your seedling that's cut in half. You don't want something that, because by now it's already dried out after you've done several and you're doing like 80, 30, however many seeds you have of these. So do a fresh cut again, and then slide your seed on, and you'll see right here. And another cool thing is that you can graft the bottom and top half of the seedling you cut. I think the bottom half can get where the root is can get quite wonky. Um, it just won't grow this, I think, as same as the top or as cleanly as the top, but it still works. And if you have limited amount of seeds and plenty of grafts, which is usually not the case, um, But if it is the case, definitely go ahead and do that. If maybe your germination technique didn't work so well, um, yeah, and maybe I can get in a little bit of that. So I did mostly like 2 part sand, 1 part of the succulent soil mix. That's what I used for germinating my seeds. It worked well last year, which is when this video was taken, and it's working well again this year. So I actually have redone this again because video is really old. Um, well, a year old, and I'm doing it again. So. And so when you get ready to start sliding your cut in half seedling on, you want to be gentle, not to squish it. And that's one thing I had to learn from last year that I'll talk about later on. Um, and also you want to make sure there's really no air gaps. That's kind of why you want a fresh cut. It's nice and juicy, and those fluids are really going to fill any of those air gaps that could be between your seedling and your grafting stock. Um, Move it around just a little bit, but and the main thing is they're going to be rings. They're rings on your seedling when you look at the cut, and rings on the grafting stock that you cut, and those rings are actually what transfer the nutrients, and you want those rings to intersect. You don't want them to be right on top of each other because that's not how they work. You want the circles to kind of be like a Venn diagram where they're intersecting at 2 points. So a little bit off center usually works well. Oh, I should also mention at this point that you would not want to have watered. I said that really weirdly, but make sure you have not watered your grafting stock, your Paraschiopsis at this point, because it could get flow way too much water and end up pushing um, your seedling off. So you wanted to have not watered it for about a week before this process. Now you could leave it like this at this point, which I've also done, and that worked pretty well. You just want to maybe put it in a box that's super humid, um, or you could do what I'm about to do here, and which I'll give some new advice now, and that is, uh, I would pre-stretch the cling wrap or whatever you call this stuff early, so it's much looser and really drapes over the seedling. I made mine way too tight, and it kind of ended up squishing a lot of my seeds, and so the grafts didn't really take because I destroyed the seedling. If you pre-stretch it, you'll notice it'll kind of drape down and kind of create a tent for humidity. You don't have to do this, but I do recommend trying this and just being very cautious with squishing, because I found that I had more success just not doing anything at all with this and just leaving it like this at this point than I did with uh, squishing it with cling wrap, which I think can work. I think pre-stretching it would help significantly, and I don't think you actually need the hanging clips. Reason here why you may want to avoid doing all that: it takes longer, more chance of getting these like really prickly needles in your fingers that you'll have a terrible time trying to get out, and you're messing with the seedling. You're possibly introducing air gaps between the seedling and the graft, moving it around, and as careful as you may be, you will be moving it. So I do recommend just keeping it in a really humid environment without light, and I think you'll get a similar process as using these kind of tents. You could put it in like a really tall bin, fill the bottom with water, but make sure like your pots aren't absorbing the water. Yeah. Again, as you can see here, this is way too tight. I'm pretty sure this one didn't make it. But there are multiple errors I made after this process, which I'll start talking about now, and that is slowly introducing them to light. Like just have them like not in your, if you're using a rack system for your grafting plants or your succulents, have them like really just like in indirect, really low indirect light, and just slowly introduce them into your room and less humid environments. Just really take your time. There's no rush. Um, I found that there's more mistakes that happen in rushing and drying it out, putting it in full light that once it's fully grafted, or etc. So just take your time. About 3 days, um, no light, no watering, and then slowly start introducing it into light. Um, and you should be good to go. And I think a couple weeks after that, it's going to be slow going once the graft starts really taking. But once the graft really takes, start water. It's it's going to go crazy, and you're going to see like the plant. I have an intro slide, which is about a year worth of growth in those slides. So.